Hi everyone, my name is Kerese Elliott. I hail from the beautiful Twin Island Federation in the Caribbean, known as St. Kitts and Nevis. I am a sustainable fashion advocate slash designer. I also am a Blue Planet Alliance Global Youth Ambassador and a Youth for SDGs scholar. I currently work at the Ministry of Tourism as a policy officer, where I assist the ministry with building sustainable tourism policies. And here with me, I have the lovely Mac Haver. Mac, tell us about yourself, please.
Hey there, Carees and those watching this. My name is Mark Haver, and I'm an ocean climate activist from the United States. I've worked with clients like Sustainable Ocean Alliance to build and support the world's largest network of young ocean leaders at the Ocean Climate Nexus. And I'm also an impact campaigner with my consulting firm, Blue Green Generation. I'm proud to be an ambassador of organizations like Peace Boat and the Planet Alliance. I really look forward to digging deeper into this conversation today.
Perfect. I don't think that they could have chosen a better duo than me and you.
Let's
but I'm,
go.
but I'm so happy to have you here, Mac. And I consider you, sorry, to be an ocean and climate expert, and that's why this series is so important because it allows youth such as yourself to have a voice and amplify that voice to people who may not be able to attend COP at this present moment. So, with that being said, I would love for us to begin this interview and we will go straight into the questions. But before we started recording, you mentioned some amazing news. Would you like to share that amazing news?
Yes, I'm happy to share the news. So I'm here on the ground in Belém for COP30, trying to represent the ocean and encourage the ocean to be front and center in the climate conversation. And just before this interview, we had a youth roundtable with the UN Secretary General Guterres, and we actually got him to support our campaign, Commit to Ocean. I introduced the campaign, and he went on for 5 minutes talking about how just important the ocean is. So know that we have allies for the ocean at the highest level of the UN, and it's up to us to carry that momentum forward to make sure that that vision for ocean climate action turns into reality.
I'm perfect. And I think you partially answered this next question that I'm going to ask. But what are your expectations coming to COP? Well, it's almost over now, but coming to COP30, and what would you consider a success for the ocean among the COP30 outcomes? And you already mentioned one.
Yes. So this year is really important because it is not just COP30, but it was also the year of the UN Ocean Conference. This conference happens only every 3 years. And the point of the conference is to raise ambition within the global political will landscape for the ocean. If we look at the past COPs, whether it was in Azerbaijan, the UAE, or in Egypt, these countries have different priorities, and those priorities did not necessarily include ocean climate action. Brazil has demonstrated political will for the ocean. Last year, when they hosted G20, they actually created an Oceans 20 subgroup for the first time. So going into COP30, we knew that the Brazilian government already demonstrated ambitious ocean leadership, and we had hoped that would materialize in how they weave the ocean into the global climate agenda. And they did just that. They ensured that the ocean was represented and one of the key pillars and objectives of their action agenda. And they even created a special post for the very first time, the COP30 Special Envoy for the Ocean. While we are nearing the end of COP, we can definitely say Brazil has done an excellent job of ensuring the ocean is front and center in the global climate conversation here. When the World Leaders Summit kicked off at the end of the week of November 3rd, the first speech was by someone from the World Meteorological Organization. And the second speech was by the COP30 Special Envoy for the Ocean. The third speech was by the COP president when the Paris Agreement was signed. And then it was followed by none other than President Lula. So the Brazilian government is already doing a great job of representing the ocean and the global climate agenda. And I'm very excited to see what this turns into when we talk about the outcomes of COP30 and how we can build a blue spread between where we are here in Belém and to wherever COP31 may be next.
Okay, perfect. And I think Organizations such as Peace Boat, the Youth for SDGs program, gives us an understanding of what it really means to advocate for the ocean. And I've been following you on Instagram, and the work that you've been putting in, the awareness that you've been bringing to your followers, it's quite commendable. And with that being said, I want to get your opinion on how can countries be supported to increase their understanding of potential ocean solutions, and what can be done to promote efforts to include ocean solutions in their NDCs and any NAPs.
That is such a great question. And even though it would seem so obvious that the ocean is a vital part of our global climate system, we have to recognize that the people negotiating our shared future are not scientists. They are diplomats, they are lawyers, they are bureaucrats, they're government professionals. Much respect to all the work that they do and they have done. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the understanding of how the ocean is connected to our global climate and global planetary systems is actually well understood. And so I think that education here at UN Climate Change is one of the most important solutions that we have to ensure that we can scale ocean-based climate solutions. In terms of how we can do that, that power lies in our hands as young people. It is critical for us to be informed of how countries create policies and commitments for climate, for environment, for our shared future, and to engage accordingly. How, as young people, can we analyze what's in our country's NDC or in our NAP and understand how ocean-based climate solutions can further be included? How can we organize ourselves to make sure that our voices are being heard and the solutions that not necessarily that we offer, because the ocean offers them, but the solutions that we can represent and encourage to be adopted reach those decision makers. So if you're a young person who wants to support ocean climate action, you too need to join our campaign and commit to ocean. We can ensure that our demands for ambitious ocean climate outcomes help us maintain our trajectory toward that 1.5 future and not more than that. But it really requires the organizational capacity for all of us to act.
Perfect, Mac. And I want to piggyback off of what you just mentioned. You gave a call to action for youths, but how will you ensure your efforts to incorporate ocean-based solutions will include indigenous people and local communities, and what is needed to ensure the benefits from ocean climate solutions are equitably distributed?
It's a really important question. And I think that it's been partially it's not partially, it has been at the center of why this campaign exists. We just passed the planetary boundary for ocean acidification and reached Earth's first tipping point, coral reef. These two threats, the livable planet, have materialized in front of us. And who do you think is going to be impacted the most? We know that it's the vulnerable coastal and island communities. But we also know that those communities are the ones that are already leading the work. If we're talking about blue finance windows and multilateral financing mechanisms for the environment like GEF or the Green Climate Fund, if we secure dedicated funding for ocean, that's not going to come next year. It's going to come 2028, 2029, 2030, maybe later. And even then, we have to think about the implementation gap, right? That money is going to go to governments. Who knows where it's going to go from there? It's so important that we acknowledge that indigenous peoples and local communities are doing the work. They are the stewards and the leaders of community-led ocean-based climate solutions. And financing for ocean climate action needs to be direct, real-time, and immediate. So ensuring that when we're campaigning for ocean-based climate solutions, advocating for us to go beyond that $1.5 billion annual funding gap in SDG 14, calling out the gaps when it comes to ocean climate financing is vital, and calling for it to be solved by direct funding for the communities leading the work is the most important piece uh, of understanding where that money needs to go. And I
And I,
actually have some news as well that I'd like to share. The ocean breakthrough is kind of like a compass, a North Star for the ocean climate community. It has different sectors like energy, aquatic foods, decarbonizing shipping, etc. And just yesterday, I heard for the first time they were launching a working group on marine IPLCs, Indigenous peoples and local communities. So now there's actually a specific group that can work to ensure that the perspectives and the individuals from these communities are represented and how we further the ocean breakthrough, which I think is huge to answer your question.
yeah. And a follow-up question to that would be, what do you think might contribute to the lack of funding in nature-based solutions? And what would you recommend to increase funding in this space? We know we always talk about funding whenever we go to COP. You always hear minority groups or the small island developing states speak on this. So what would be your answer to this question?
Listen, especially in 2025, the funding landscape looks bleak, but we cannot let that define where we know the money needs to go. I think for ocean and I think for nature, we have siloed our communities from climate for the worst, because even climate absolutely struggles with funding, but we too are climate solutions, and more money is becoming available, especially as we negotiate the Paris Agreement. Things like the new collective quantified goal on finance, or these different loss and damage funds. There are so many different ways in which oceans and nature is applicable as a climate solution. And it's about evangelizing how they're connected to climate that can ensure we get more and more access to funding. And the more present that we are in the climate space will also convince people that, oh yeah, this is somewhere where we need to keep our attention. So breaking out of our silos and ensuring we make the connection clear between ocean and climate and nature and climate, I think is the critical piece of solving that finance question.
Perfect. And I know you made mention to this previously, but I just want to get like a more definitive response. What are some strategies you think should be explored to close the ocean finance gap?
I think that's a tough question because it's something that we as the civil society group for ocean and coastal zones are really trying to figure out, like, how do we get that money? But
Yeah.
again, I think it's about breaking down those silos. Like, we keep going to the same funders as ocean climate people. And when you have more ocean climate groups going to the same ocean funders, does that mean more money for everyone, or the same amount of money split between more people and less money for everyone? That's where we are. Like, we really need to understand how to stop talking to the person to the left and to the right of you at the same event every year. So that way we can try and get some new funders in. That's my perspective, not to be a hot take. And it's definitely easier said than done. But I also think that it is really important to rally grassroots voices. You know, when we have the groundswell of support saying this needs money, and we direct those voices at the people who hold the money, finance ministers, multilateral development, philanthropies, when we have people raise their collective voice and strategically direct it to the people controlling those finances, then they're going to be surprised to see such a groundswell telling them where money should go. And that's critical. So that's why I also created the Commit to Ocean campaign, and why it's so important to have your voice behind this movement.
And I love that because that's one of the recommendation that you can give for promoting ocean climate action. And I love that throughout this entire series, you've been giving call to actions, not just to youths, but to ocean funders. And if you're an ocean funder and you're watching this interview, please, the name is Mark Haver. Please feel free to reach out to him. so
Please.
so we can get that funding going because it is definitely needed. And not to stray from the topic, Matt, but you and I both love sustainable fashion. What is it like there
Absolutely.
at COP at the moment with regards to the sustainable fashion aspect? I know you're focusing on ocean climate action, but Have you had any chance to visit any pavilions that may be speaking on sustainable fashion?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. Sustainable fashion is a topic at COP. For example, I know at the Thailand Pavilion, they are having this incredible sustainable fashion show from Thailand sustainable fashion designers. I know at event spaces like the Goals House, they also had an event about sustainable fashion with Vogue Brazil. I think the event unfortunately had to be canceled, but it does demonstrate that sustainable fashion is present. But I also think it's present in the way that civil society brings it to the conversation more so than it is being negotiated. And I think that's a problem. The fashion industry is the largest polluter behind oil and gas. The fashion industry contributes 10 to 12% of annual greenhouse gas emissions. It's not like art or music. It's a creative industry, so we don't need to think of it like a polluter. The fashion industry is absolutely culpable for extractivism, environmental degradation, and contributor to a climate crisis. We need to call this out. Fashion is such an incredible tool to engage people and campaigns for the environment beyond the people who already understand why we need to act on climate, why the ocean is important. So let's continue leveraging fashion as a channel to communicate with the general public while also ensuring that there's some accountability and actions to ensure that the industry can decarbonize.
And I love that. And I know you are there being important and an influencer, of course. So I'll let you leave in a few, but do you have any last words or any call to actions that you would like to give?
Absolutely. So, and thank you so much, Chris, for this opportunity. I really appreciate the work that you are doing as a leader from the Caribbean. I think it's really important that we center your voices during this COP because I was just at that youth roundtable with the UN Secretary General, and there was a young person from Aruba, Nigel,
Nigel, love
and he
Nigel.
said, yes, and he said that this year that there have been 3 Category 5 hurricanes, which is insane in the Caribbean. And I used to live in Florida for 4 years. I had to evacuate my campus 3 years out of 4. This is not normal. This is not the future that we deserve. This is not the future that we can offer to future generations because who knows if we may be able to offer it when we too might be in the path of a hurricane. It is an underscore of the urgency of why we need to act now. And if we leave the ocean and its solutions out of the conversation, we are ignoring one of the greatest opportunities to keep 1.5 alive. Ocean-based climate solutions can reduce the emissions gap by 35%. But with only 2% of global climate finance dedicated to ocean solutions, how are we possibly going to ensure that there's a livable planet for all? So this could be the time when the tide changes. Join Commit to Ocean, sign our letter, add your voice, and use our toolkit to send that letter that is now endorsed by 350 individuals, over 80 organizations, and the UN Secretary General Guterres himself. We can send that letter to over 100 government officials through our app, Chili, and the one-click action link. And this is how we show world leaders, not that we would like to see more action for ocean. This is how we demand ocean climate action from COP30 and beyond. But I need you all to help me. Please check out my campaign, Commit to Ocean. Go to my Instagram, Oceans Warrior, to learn more about the campaign, check out our actions, and be sure to share with your friends and family. At COP30 and beyond, let's commit to ocean.
And I think that's an amazing way to end this interview session. Thank you so much, Mac. Always a pleasure to be in your presence, to be educated about ocean climate action, and just to be amongst your lovely self. So thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you so much, Angel. It's incredible to see the way that you're inspiring leaders like me with your bright, shining personality and how much you've already done. not just with young people, but with the government and being a bridge between those. So thank you for being that bridge between me and the Virtual Ocean Pavilion and our audience today. Definitely look forward to our next little chat about sustainable fashion.
Most definitely. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.